Most Rolex owners are wearing a watch that does significantly more than they realize. Not in a vague sense, in a specific functional sense that affects accuracy, longevity, and the ability to spot a fake at a glance. These are features built into every genuine Rolex that the brand rarely explains clearly, retailers almost never demonstrate, and even longtime owners frequently never discover. Before skipping any part of this video, consider that several of these features exist specifically to protect a watch that can cost anywhere from $8,000 to over $40,000. Understanding them isn't just interesting, it directly determines whether that investment is being used correctly or is slowly degraded through avoidable mistakes. Subscribe before this video ends. New content drops every week and it is free, starting with the feature that separates every authentic modern Rolex from every replica ever made. Secret number 13. The laser etched crown on the crystal. At the 6 o'clock position on the sapphire crystal of every Rolex produced since 2002, there is a tiny Rolex crown logo etched directly into the glass using a laser. It measures less than 1 millimeter and is nearly invisible to the naked eye. Under a loupe or in direct light at the right angle, it appears as a faint relief in the crystal surface. This feature was introduced specifically as an anti-counterfeiting measure that cannot be replicated affordably by fake manufacturers. Adding it to a replica requires equipment that costs more than the watch itself. The etching does not affect scratch resistance or clarity in any way during normal wear. It exists entirely to verify authenticity. When purchasing a pre-owned Rolex, checking for this marking under magnification at 6 o'clock is one of the fastest authentication steps available. Its absence on a watch supposedly produced after 2002 is a significant red flag. Secret number 12. The Rehaut engraving and what it actually confirms. The Rehaut is the inner ring of the dial face, the narrow band between the dial itself and the crystal edge. On modern Rolex watches, this ring is engraved with the Rolex name repeated continuously around the full circumference, and the unique serial number of the watch is etched at the 6 o'clock position. This feature was introduced in 2007 and serves two distinct purposes. First, it is another layer of authentication that counterfeiters struggle to reproduce accurately. The font, spacing, and depth of the engraving on a genuine piece are precise in ways that replicas consistently fail to match. Second, the serial number appearing on the Rehaut means the watch's identity is visible without removing the bracelet to check the case side, which was the previous method. For buyers evaluating a pre-owned watch, comparing the Rehaut serial number to the number on the paperwork and to the number on the case is a standard verification step that takes in under 30 seconds and confirms whether a watch's components are original and matching. Secret number 11. The Triplock crown system and what it means for water resistance. The winding crown, the small knob on the right side of the case used to set the time and date, is one of the most structurally critical components on any watch. It is also the point where water is most likely to enter the case if the sealing system fails. Rolex developed the Triplock crown system used on their diving models, including the Submariner and Sea Dweller, which incorporates 3 separate rubber sealing rings inside the crown rather than the single seal used on most watches. When the crown is screwed down against the case, all 3 rings compress simultaneously to create a seal rated to significant water resistance depths. The important detail most owners miss is that water resistance ratings are only valid when the crown is fully screwed down. A Submariner with the crown in the pull-out position for time setting has essentially no water resistance at all. Every time a watch is worn in water, confirming the crown is fully screwed down before immersion is the single most important maintenance step available to the owner. This takes approximately 3 seconds and prevents water damage that can require a full service costing $800 or more. Secret number 10. The Glide Lock clasp system and its hidden micro adjustment range. The Oyster bracelet on Submariner models includes a clasp called Glide Lock that lets you adjust the bracelet length in very small increments without any tools. Inside the clasp, a sliding mechanism with fine teeth lets the effective length increase or decrease by up to approximately 8 millimeters in total, enough to accommodate wrist size changes caused by temperature, altitude, or physical activity. To access the adjustment, open the clasp fully. Move the small lever on the inside of the clasp while you reposition the sliding section along the ratchet teeth. Each click changes the effective length by about 2 millimeters. Close the clasp over the adjustment and the setting is invisible while you wear the watch. Many Submariner owners who feel their bracelet slightly loose after a hot day or slightly tight in cold weather are unaware this adjustment exists. They often take the watch to a jeweler for a link removal that was not actually necessary. Understanding this feature prevents unnecessary service visits and allows the watch to be fitted correctly for the wrist conditions of the moment. Secret number 9. The quick set date function and the position that damages the movement. Rolex watches with date displays have 3 crown positions. Position 1 is fully screwed in for normal wear. Position 2 is the first pull, which on date models activates the quick set date function, allowing the date to be changed directly by rotating the crown without advancing the hands through 24 hours. Position 3 is the second pull, which sets the time by moving the hands. What many owners don't know is that changing the date using the quick set function while the hands are positioned between around 9 p.m. and 3 a.m., when the date mechanism is actively engaging, puts stress on the date wheel and the date mechanism components. Over years of doing this repeatedly, it can cause premature wear on the date mechanism that manifests as a date that changes slowly or incompletely. The correct practice is to advance the hands to any position clearly outside that range before using the quick set function. This takes under a minute and meaningfully extends the service interval for the date mechanism. And this is only the beginning. Several of the most useful features are hidden inside the movement itself, and understanding them directly affects what to do when the watch starts behaving unexpectedly. Secret number 8. The Parachrom hairspring and what it means for magnetic resistance. Inside a Rolex movement, the hairspring, a coiled ribbon of metal that oscillates to regulate timekeeping, is manufactured from a proprietary alloy called Parachrom. It was developed in-house by Rolex. It differs from the standard alloys used in most Swiss movements in one critical way. It is highly resistant to the effects of magnetic fields. Magnetic fields are one of the most common causes of watch inaccuracy. Placing a watch on or near a speaker, a laptop, a magnetic bag clasp, or certain phone cases can magnetize the hairspring and cause the watch to run fast or slow by significant margins, sometimes minutes per day rather than seconds. Rolex's Parachrom hairspring resists magnetization far more effectively than standard alloys. If a Rolex is running significantly inaccurately, and there is no sign of physical damage or impact, check for magnetization before any other diagnosis. A watchmaker can demagnetize a movement in minutes using a simple degausser. If magnetism is the cause, this single step usually resolves the inaccuracy completely. Secret number 7. The Superlative chronometer standard and what it actually certifies. A Rolex purchased from an authorized dealer carries a green seal indicating Superlative chronometer certification. Most buyers understand this broadly as meaning the watch is accurate. Fewer understand what it specifically guarantees. Superlative chronometer certification means the watch has been tested by Rolex after full assembly, movement, case, and bracelet together, and has demonstrated accuracy within plus or minus 2 seconds per day across a range of temperatures and positions. This is a stricter standard than the COSC chronometer certification alone, which permits plus or minus 4 seconds per day and tests the movement before casing. For context, most mechanical watches from reputable manufacturers are accurate within plus or minus 10 to 15 seconds per day. Knowing this standard also gives owners a benchmark for service. A Rolex that has drifted to 15 or 20 seconds per day is performing outside its specification and is indicating that a service is due, not that mechanical watches are inherently imprecise. Secret number 6. The Cyclops lens magnification and how to use it to spot fakes. The date window on most Rolex models with a date display is covered by a small magnifying lens called the Cyclops, mounted on the crystal directly above the date aperture. This lens magnifies the date by 2.5 times. On a genuine Rolex, the date fills the window completely and appears crisp, centered, and fully legible at a normal viewing distance. On counterfeit watches, the Cyclops lens is consistently one of the most poorly replicated features. Fakes typically show a date that appears small within the window rather than filling it, slightly blurry at the edges, or offset to one side. The magnification ratio on replica lenses is frequently lower than 2.5 times, producing the visual impression of a date that looks distant rather than close. When evaluating any Rolex purchase, view the date through the Cyclops at arm's length and confirm that it fills the window completely with clear, centered numerals. This is a rapid authenticity check. It requires no equipment and it takes seconds. Secret number 5. The caliber number and what it tells you about your specific watch. The movement inside a Rolex is identified by a caliber number, visible on the case, back documentation, and in service records. Caliber 3135 is one of the most widely used movements in the Submariner and Datejust, and has been in production since 1988 with continuous refinements. Caliber 3235 is its successor, introduced in 2015 and incorporates Rolex's Chronergy escapement, a redesigned mechanism that improves power efficiency by approximately 15% and extends power reserve to approximately 70 hours, compared to the earlier 48 hours. Knowing the caliber number of a specific watch tells an owner exactly what power reserve to expect, which service parts are applicable, and how the movement compares to current specifications. This information is directly relevant when evaluating whether a pre-owned watch has been correctly serviced with appropriate parts. Secret number 4. The power reserve behavior and what running down means for the movement. A Rolex with an automatic movement winds itself through the motion of the wrist via a rotor. A watch worn daily will typically maintain full wind. A watch left unworn for more than approximately 2 to 3 days will run down and stop, depending on the caliber. What most owners do not know is that allowing a mechanical watch to run completely down and sit, stopped repeatedly, is not neutral for the movement. Lubricants inside the movement are formulated to be distributed by the motion of the parts. A movement that sits stopped for extended periods allows those lubricants to settle and pool unevenly. Over years of repeated stop-start cycles, this accelerates wear on specific components between service intervals. For watches worn only occasionally, a watch winder keeps the watch wound and keeps lubricants distributed by rotating the watch slowly when it is not on the wrist. The cost of a basic quality winder is significantly less than the cost of bringing a service interval forward by 2 to 3 years. Secret number 3. The correct crown operating technique that most owners get wrong. When pulling the crown out to set the time on a Rolex with a screw-down crown, you must first unscrew the crown, rotating it counterclockwise until it pulls free of the case threads, and only then pull it to the setting positions. When you are finished setting, push the crown back in and rotate it clockwise until it is firmly screwed down. The mistake most owners make is applying lateral force to the crown while it is still partially threaded, trying to force it into the setting position without fully unscrewing it first. Over time, this damages the crown threads, and eventually you may need a crown replacement and possibly case thread repair, a service that costs significantly more than the crown alone. The correct motion is a deliberate unscrew before any pull. It takes 3 additional seconds and it eliminates a common and entirely avoidable source of mechanical damage. Secret number 2. The service interval and what happens when it is ignored. Rolex recommends a service interval of approximately 10 years for modern watches. That interval is reduced to 5 to 7 years for watches used in particularly demanding conditions, including regular water exposure and heavy physical use. During a service, the movement is fully disassembled and cleaned ultrasonically. Worn components are replaced, lubricants are renewed, the case and bracelet are cleaned, seals are replaced. Finally, a pressure test is performed. What happens when this interval is ignored is progressive and predictable. Lubricants dry out, causing metal-on-metal wear at bearing points. Worn components that would have been caught and replaced during service begin to affect adjacent components. The cumulative effect is a movement that requires more extensive and expensive work than a timely service would have needed. The cost differential between a routine service on a well-maintained watch and a service complicated by worn components or water damage can range from several hundred to several $1,000s, depending on what needs replacement. Tracking service history and keeping to the recommended interval is the single highest value maintenance practice for protecting a watch's mechanical condition. Secret number 1: the sapphire crystal scratch resistance and the one thing that will scratch it. Rolex has used scratch-resistant sapphire crystal synthetic corundum with a hardness rating of 9 on the Mohs scale on its watches since the 1970s. Sapphire is the second hardest naturally occurring material after diamond. Under normal daily conditions, including contact with metal, keys, and hard surfaces, sapphire crystal will not scratch. What most owners do not know is the specific category of materials that will scratch it. Any substance with a Mohs hardness rating at or above 9, which includes diamond and certain ceramic materials, will scratch sapphire crystal. That means diamond rings, diamond set jewelry, and some industrial ceramics worn or used in close proximity to the watch are the specific risk category. Not keys, not stainless steel, not concrete. Diamonds. Equally important, Rolex applies an anti-reflective coating to the interior surface of the crystal rather than the exterior on most models. This coating is vulnerable to solvents and aggressive cleaning products. Using anything other than water and a soft cloth on the crystal surface risks damaging this coating, producing permanent haze that appears as clouding on the dial side of the crystal. Every feature covered in this video exists in the watch already. None of it requires modification or additional purchases. What it requires is knowing where to look, what the features do, and how to use them correctly, which is precisely what the documentation that comes with a Rolex never fully explains, and what most retailers never take the time to cover. Subscribe if this kind of content is useful. Every week there is another layer of this: the specifications, the features, and the ownership knowledge that protects a significant investment and separates informed buyers from everyone else.